Congrats on the single
Oh,
release. Sounds great. I listened to it again last night through Apple Music just to check it out in the real world.
well, so you produced High Park, you produced the whole album that's gradually going to be releasing over the next year. So super, super excited for all of it. I'm sure people know this about you, but just in case anybody doesn't, you are a beloved singer-songwriter yourself, by my count. 12 records to your name, two Juno nominations, a bunch of accolades. So I just, wondered if you could say
I'm
a
an
little
old
bit
dog,
about,
yeah.
is that right?
I'm an old dog. I've been around for a while, yeah.
Have a lot to show for it. So, but what drew you to the production side of things after kind of so long doing the singer-songwriter side of things?
Well, I think I was always involved in the production side of
Yeah.
things. I got that bug pretty early. Around the same time that I started learning guitar and playing music, in high school I had a buddy who his dad had an old 4 track, and I learned a few recording techniques, through him in the early days, and then I got my own 4 track, and then just kind of never looked back. Back in high school, university, used to just experiment with recording things, and then graduated to an 8 track, and then got to go into a few different studios and see how it works in a real studio. And then the whole transition to digital happened, and I was kind of a late adopter of recording on computers. I was never super into the technical side of things. I kind of know enough to get by, but
Hmm.
and I sort of resisted the computers a little bit. I let other people take care of that, but eventually, had to join them. And once and that they're so good now that it's amazing what you can
Yeah.
do, and what people can do, just in their own little space on a relatively modest budget. It's really democratized music production, I think, in a great way. But so yeah, I feel like I've seen a bunch of different from a cassette 4 track to recording on the latest DAW with the latest softwares. We've come a
Hmm.
long way, and it doesn't necessarily sound better than those four
Hmm.
track days, but it's just different, and you can do so much more, and yeah. So I don't know. I've always loved it.
Yeah.
Oh, but I guess the pandemic kind of accelerated that side of things for me. So I was
Okay.
I was on tour actually with Noah
Mhm.
Reed, who I also a singer-songwriter, as actor, sort of Renaissance man
Yeah.
that I'm lucky to be friends with, and I've worked with on 3 of his records.
Mhm.
Um, I was on tour playing drums in his band when the whole pandemic hit, and we had a whole bunch of tour dates canceled, and the
Mhm.
reality was kind of setting in that okay, we might need to pivot to something else for a little while here. And so I invested in a bit of recording equipment and got a new computer, and then I've done a bunch of albums since then. I guess
Yeah.
I sort of focused on it, yeah. And I don't know, I really enjoy that side of things.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's clear that you love it,
Mhm.
and that makes it so much easier from the artist side as well to know that we're both like really passionate about the project that we're working on. So,
Yeah, well,
yeah.
your album was so much fun to make, Andrew. It was great. You were super prepared and super committed and dedicated, and clearly you'd worked on those songs, for a while, I think, before we even took them in the studio. So they were at a good level. Like when we went in, there wasn't a lot of tinkering with the songs that was required. I think you already had some really nice arrangements, and so we were able to get a few good musicians together and
Yeah.
be efficient about it, and go to a nice spot with a great engineer. And I think, what did we do? 3 days in the studio, and we got the
Uh,
bulk of the record done.
I think it was, yeah, it was
I
three
think
days. Yeah, 2 days in
three
April.
days at Union, and that's where we got probably 80% at least of the record done, and then got some really, really talented people to do some overdubs remotely,
Yep.
and that's how we did it.
Yeah, definitely. I was going to ask you, sort of like speaking of the songs. I would imagine. I mean, the songs that I sent you in their first form were iPhone demos, essentially like iPhone voice notes, like pretty rough, pretty raw. And I wondered sort of what your your process is from a production kind of standpoint when you hear something kind of that raw. It's like which song is going to benefit from the full kind of production approach. Like, what are the stronger ones? What are the ones that maybe aren't going to kind of stand the test if there's a certain process that you have around that?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I'd call it a process, but I like to hear the songs for the first time in that really stripped down way. I, I think I encourage, I mean, sometimes people have more developed demos, which is totally cool too. But if I'm going to be working with an artist and they haven't recorded the songs yet, I encourage them to just do a demo with their phone, just like a simple recording, whether it's piano and voice or guitar and voice. And
Mm-hmm.
I really like hearing the bare bones of the song, and I feel like you can cut right to the emotion and intention of the songwriter that way, and then yeah, I guess only really add as necessary,
Mm-hmm.
because the main elements are going to be there with the vocal and the melody and so
Mm-hmm.
yeah, just try to elevate that, but not layer too much stuff on that the main parts get lost. And I think that's kind of my approach.
Yeah.
I'm fairly minimalist, I think, as a producer,
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's fun to go big and grand, but
Mm-hmm.
gotta, yeah, pick those moments wisely, I think.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I do feel now that this project is finished, there's kind of a timeless quality to the production where, I don't think it could be accused of having like a short shelf life or, having too many trinkets or like more bells and whistles than needed. I think we've got like some cool little surprises here and there, but
Yeah.
there is kind of like that real classic element to the production style.
Yeah, I'm really happy with how it turned out. Yeah, I don't think it's too stamped in any particular era or there's elements of kind of classic songwriting from you with a classic piano singer-songwriter, but then, I think we've also got the synth and ambient guitar element of it kind of, I don't know, makes it feel a little more contemporary,
Yeah,
and then yeah, there's some really classic elements with the string arrangements, and
totally.
like from Drew and Mike, and yeah, it's a nice, I don't know, it takes you on a nice journey, I think, but
Yeah,
hopefully still, feels like a cohesive record. That's always the challenge, keep things varied and constantly interesting, but
yeah,
all feeling part of a
yeah,
whole.
yeah,
Hmm.
definitely. And I did want to kind of mention, kind of on that note of, the different people that we worked with. It really felt great coming in to work with you that you had your solid kind of team established in terms of, Devin Henderson on bass and Marshall Bureau on drums and Chris Stringer engineering. And does that feel like kind of a critical element to you beforehand to really like assemble sort of the foundational players before really fully jumping in?
Yeah, I think every project's going to be different in terms of who's available and what the budget is and what the approach is and whether there's sort of a built-in band already or
Yeah,
whether or people maybe already know who they want to bring in as musicians, and sometimes there's a totally clean slate and I can kind of put the band together, and so it's always a little bit different, but there's a real comfort factor, and I know it's good to get out of your comfort zone sometimes
yeah,
too, but there's something to be said for comfort
yeah.
sometimes, and I definitely feel comfortable working at Union,
Hmm.
that studio that we worked at with, and with Chris Stringer engineering.
Yeah,
I know that there's a certain baseline um, of just dependability and quality to the sounds, and good people to hang with, that's
yeah,
guaranteed, and so that, yeah, that part's taken care of. And then yeah, I've had the good fortune of working with both Marshall on drums and Devin on bass on a few different projects over the last couple of years.
mhm,
Marshall I've known for longer. And had toured with him, years ago with my sister, and so I've
mhm.
been on the road with him a bit, and so we go back a ways. And I don't know if I'd ever actually had them together as a rhythm section though until your album, but
Cool.
they're both real seasoned pros and have been in the studio a lot. And when you get that caliber of studio musician together, even
Mhm.
if they've never played together before. There's usually a certain language that those musicians speak that they can pick up pretty quickly and find a groove that pretty quickly. And
Mhm.
yeah, I love how we did it. They
Mhm.
just had the iPhone demos as well ahead of time, and then you guys all just got together and started jamming on the tune, and within a take or two we usually had a pretty cool groove, and then it was just about refining it a little bit.
Yeah, those were some of the most magical moments for
Hmm.
me, is just actually just, getting in the studio, sitting down, first couple of takes, the arrangement starts to come together and you really start to feel where the song is going. And yeah, just that really groovy, cohesive feeling.
Hmm. Groovy.
Yeah.
Let's say groovy a few more times. Yeah.
Yeah. Can't overdo it with
It's a
that.
groovy record. It is.
um,
You got to
I
make
wanted to
it
ask you
groovy.
about, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, no, no. You go ahead.
Okay. I did want to ask you about drums. So
Hmm.
you play the drums, and it seemed to me it was a real particular like skill and passion for you among the many skills and passions that you have. Like there's a real attention to the way that the drums sounded, a real kind of attentiveness to the arrangements, and just wondered if you could, tell us a little bit about like where your relationship with the drums came from.
Yeah, I do love playing drums. It's definitely it's not my first instrument, so and I would never consider myself a drummer in the sense that Marshall is, where he's a real drummer and a gigging drummer and plays with all kinds of different people and makes his living as a drummer.
Yeah.
I feel like I love to play drums, and I I think I've got my style, and I'm always trying to get a little bit better. I'm probably would consider myself, yeah, more of a singer songwriter, guitar player, piano player first, and then drummer maybe third. But although having said that, lately I've been playing more drums than
Mhm.
than guitar sometimes. But I do think the drums are just important to they're kind of the foundation of the production of a song a lot
Yeah.
of the time. They can really, even though the melody and the vocal is the most important part, the drums are still critical, I think, because they can potentially mess it up. I think if they're too much, if they're competing too much.
Yeah.
And so but they can really solidify things too, and just be like a nice solid foundation for a track too. And so they're usually important, but it's just finding the right feel, the right intensity. And so, yeah, I think it is important to pay attention. If I'm listening back in the studio to takes, I am often listening to just, have to be able to dance to it, or not dance, but
Yeah.
like just move to it,
Yeah.
and it has to just feel good. And a lot of that comes from the whole band, the drums and the bass and everything
Mhm.
working together. But you can really kind of hone in on the groove of the drums, and sometimes a few adjustments there in the early takes can be really kind of get you on the right path, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
Hmm.
Something that was exciting to me about making this record with you, it's actually 8 of 11 tracks have drums on them, and there are a couple tunes where I wouldn't have necessarily thought that they would get drums based on where the demos
Hmm.
were, and they ended up getting drums, and they really like transform the song. And I think like it's hard to really imagine the song without them. So that was really neat.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and I'm glad we have the couple that we left the drums off,
Yeah,
because I feel like it's a nice break in a way when you're listening to the record. You breathe a little bit more on those ones that and then the drums just feel, when they kick back in on the next song, they're just that much more satisfying. So it's nice to have
yeah.
a few moments, I think, without drums, and where and I think the songs that we chose to leave them off,
Hmm.
it suited those songs, and they needed to breathe a little bit more.
Yeah, I agree. You want like an ebb and a flow,
Hmm.
and you want, yeah, the sort of intensity balanced out with kind of less intensity too.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. Is there anything that you're really like? So High Park is out now.
Yeah.
The rest of the singles and the album is yet to come. Is there anything that you feel kind of particularly excited for people to hear on this record?
I love the whole record. I In terms of individual songs, which are my favorites? High Park is definitely a good one to lead with. I'm I love the energy of Rage Stage. I think that's one of my favorites right off the bat.
Mm-hmm.
It's just got it's got a great sort of dark mood to it, and a bit of an edge to it, in the vocal and the sentiment, and I really like how that one turned out.
Yeah.
And yeah, I really love the delicacy of Gentle Sentinel with the string arrangement from Drew
Yeah.
Dureka, who's an extraordinarily talented musician and
That's.
arranger and composer. And we were lucky to have him on the record.
Oh yeah.
That's a beautiful one, and I don't know, those ones maybe stand out a little bit, but
Mhm.
there's something cool about all of them.
Yeah.
Terrible Date is a kind of a unique one. That's just a bit more of a whimsical song, but a really great lyric from you, and
Mm-hmm.
has a little bit of a different sort of waltz feel to it. And I think that one turned out great too. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, the whole record's great. I guess what's the next single going to be? Or is that a
Junk.
okay, Junk? Okay,
Yeah.
cool. Well, Junk is that's interesting. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, because I feel like that's one that we maybe struggled with a little bit more than the others in terms of the mix, or
Yeah.
there was a lot going on. We had a lot of layers of synths and stuff in that one. So
Mm-hmm.
we should give a shout out to Chris Stringer for who
Yeah.
mixed the record. He engineered it at Union and also mixed it,
Mm-hmm.
and he did a great job with the mixes. But I know that one was a bit of a beast to kind of pull all the elements together. But
Yeah.
that's cool.
Yeah.
I look forward to that coming out.
Me too. And yes, definite shout out to Chris for engineering and for doing a great job with mixing all the songs. Super, super grateful to have him as part of the team. So, yeah. But single wise, it's interesting. Like you named the songs that are all kind of planned for the rest of the singles. So we're a little
Oh
bit
yeah.
sort of
Okay.
on track in terms of the real like standouts that we want people to hear that we're excited for people to hear.
Nice.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. Yeah, a little bit depends on you know, making the videos and like grants and things like that. So the order
Yeah.
might be slightly different if I could have my utopian vision of things, but it'll all work out okay.
Yep. Yep. The fun part, the behind the scenes business side of releasing the music is, you know, not my favorite part of the business, but it's
Mm-hmm.
more fun to make the albums. It's strategizing about how you're going to get people to hear them is
Yeah,
another ball game. But sounds
that's
like you're doing all right so far, though. I
yeah,
feel like High
doing
Park's being well received from what I can glean
yeah.
from the internet, and that's exciting that WXPN is going to play it too. I mean, I don't know if that's a secret, but that's cool.
It's well, it's okay.
Yeah,
It's soon to be
yeah,
announced. So if
cool.
not today, then tomorrow. So yeah, that's a really really exciting. I just happy that it's being well received and
Hmm.
that we're getting a bit of an audience already.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, yeah. I did want to ask you. You and I kind of started in the Toronto music scene about around the same time, like the year 2000, and
Hmm.
I did things differently. I went away for 20 years. You continued on making great music for that time. And speaking of you know marketing, getting the music out to people. What have you noticed over the last 20 years, the good, the bad, and the ugly, now versus then?
Oh man, well, it's changed so much,
Yeah.
and I have to admit I'm not super on top of what all the latest strategies and techniques around making the most of the streaming slash social media era that we live in. I feel like I have a sense of it, but I work with a record label, Outside Music, and so
Yeah.
there are people who can kind of take care of distributing the music to the streaming, and doing some publicity, and I don't have to chase that down myself. But I know that the majority of people making music these days are independent musicians like yourself, who are doing all that kind of stuff yourself. So you probably know way more about the ins and outs of actually releasing a record these days independently than I do.
Mm-hmm.
But it really has changed a lot, just in terms of, well, obviously when we started, the focus was on making
Yep.
CDs and selling CDs, and it's clearly not anymore. Vinyl is a cool thing to make, to have a physical product, but you're not talking about the same kind of volume numbers of sales of
Yep.
vinyl as we used to do CDs back in the day. And so it's mainly about streams. And yeah, I don't really know how all that business works. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I see some of the numbers of streams that some people are getting, and even that I'm getting and I'm just kind of like, who is listening to this? Like, how are these numbers getting so big? I don't really know. It's all kind of like
Mm-hmm.
crazy to me. It seems like a lot to me, but
Yeah.
I don't know. It sounds cool sometimes when those numbers get up high, and but it's cool that you can see where people are listening to your music all around the
Mm-hmm.
world. And we didn't really have that in 2000. You couldn't get distribution in other territories all that
Yeah.
easily. You had to have a label on the ground in a different country, and who were getting CDs in stores and
Mm-hmm.
getting you local publicity. And I mean, now you can just kind of put out whatever you want to the world through your own channels, and so yeah, so much of it has changed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I remember MySpace. Do you remember MySpace?
Oh
Like,
yeah.
that
Oh
was
yeah.
sort of the introduction to, the musicians having their own page where the music samples and kind of some pictures, and posting your tour dates. And I mean, I guess you could have that on a website, but there was something about MySpace that I feel like launched a new era of marketing yourself as an indie musician.
Mm-hmm.
And now we've launched way beyond that. But
Yeah.
I don't know, my head just kind of spins with how much it's changed, and I haven't stayed up totally on top of it all.
Yeah. I think it would seem really difficult to do that. There's got to be a science behind it, but I have not even begun to fully understand the science behind it. It feels like every day is a bit of a learning curve.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you concentrate on making really good music,
Mm-hmm.
I like to believe that it'll find a way to get to people. If you concentrate on the art, and make that good, um, it'll find a way to some ears.
Yeah.
And so, but it is nice to have a bit of help. And I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's probably
That's
lots of people out there advertising their services to help you that are maybe not the best avenue to go down. But I don't know. I don't know much
yeah.
about that.
Yeah, I've just started to get some of the spammy
Oh yeah,
emails. That's
yeah.
like, I'm probably not going to spend $20 to get on some playlist or whatever. So
I don't
there
know.
are other ways to
I've
do
never
this.
really done it. I get those, and maybe I'm missing out. I don't know. It all seems a little shifty to me. I'm sure it's not. I'm sure it's well-meaning people who love music,
Yeah.
but there is something about that sort of. There's always been that aspect in the music industry. Even back in the '50s, when people
Yeah.
jukebox singles
Yeah.
and pay to play on radio stations and stuff. I think that element has always been there in the music business. It's just sort of morphed through
Hmm.
different changes in technology.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. That's a good observation for sure. Yeah. Speaking of kind of life changes, if it isn't too personal a question, I wondered about asking you how fatherhood has changed your relationship to music and production. It's a big life transition.
Yeah, for sure. Well, it's harder to get work done because I'm work. I sort of work from home, but then I've got these kids at home all the time,
Yeah.
two little kids, and so they take up a lot of time. I think if I had an office to go to, I could maybe compartmentalize things a little bit more. But when it's all kind of on top of each other,
Mhm.
it's challenging. But
Yeah.
I do love being a father. I love having little kids, and they keep you busy. They keep you on your toes, but
Hmm.
they're a lot of fun and they're entertaining.
Yeah.
And I've found it has um, slowed me down a little bit actually in terms of my own musical output. But
Yeah.
um, I'm hoping to. I'm chipping away at another record, but it's going a little slower than usual.
Okay.
And maybe I'll just leave it at that. But I'm working on it.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah,
Well, happy to hear. I
yeah,
was going to ask you if there's kind of anything that you are chipping away at, so there is something
yeah, yeah.
going
I
on
was
there.
just working on a song right before hopping on this with you. So you got to take those moments when you get the house to yourself, like, and
Yeah,
try to make the
absolutely.
most of
For
it.
sure, for sure. And speaking of which, I won't keep you for too long, but I did want to ask you one more thing, kind of back to production for a second. So there is a real human element to producing music. It's not all kind of technical, right? It's like your relationship with the artist
Mm,
and your relationship
hmm.
kind of with the songs. And there's something that um, so I think you're really wonderful at that piece of it. And there's
Thank you.
like kind of like little anecdote that stands out to me. We were working on the song called "Oh Tears," and it was later in the day, that particular day, and working with the rhythm section, and I was starting to make mistakes and I was starting to maybe like get a little bit frustrated with myself, and we were trying to kind of make it work with the rhythm section, and then it seemed like sort of you just had this instinct that kicked in to kind of send the band home for the day, and then to just sort of let me noodle around on the piano. And I think then we got a really great song out of that. And I just wondered whether that and also the first time that I played these songs in person for anyone was actually for you. It had only ever been kind of electronic. I loved my keyboard down your stairs, and hands were totally shaking and made me feel so comfortable to play the songs. And yeah, I just wondered whether that feels like it comes naturally or whether that's a skill that you've developed over time and experience.
Well, I don't know. It's nice to hear you say that. I'm glad that you felt comfortable sharing your songs. I guess I think it comes a little bit from being on the other side of it and knowing how
Yeah.
vulnerable it can be to share your music with someone and trust your songs with someone else. Nobody has as close a relationship to your music as you do, obviously, and
Mhm.
so you have to really trust who you're working with. And I think yeah, I think it just probably a little bit is maybe just hopefully my personality and my just kind of natural way of trying to make people feel comfortable around me. I think that's just kind of my vibe,
Yeah,
so
yeah,
to
for
speak.
sure.
But also probably just yeah, having been around for a while and
Hmm.
made a bunch of my own albums, and now having been on the other side of the glass for a few other people's albums. I think you just kind of get a bit of experience doing it and kind of know what works and start to be able to read certain cues.
Yeah.
Like you said, like sometimes you have to try an idea out and it might feel like it's not working, and but maybe you have to, I don't know, not just abandon it right away, like
Hmm.
try tweaking a few things, and then if it's still not working, then yeah, making that call when to move
Yeah.
on. I think that's part of the kind of the subtle art of producing, and something that there's no textbook you can consult for that. I
Yeah.
think it just kind of, you kind of have to trust your instincts, and I'm sure you get better and better at it the more and more albums you do. And you know, I'm kind of nervous going into every album that I produce too, because it's always a new thing, and I feel like I'm still just trying to build up my experience doing it.
Yeah.
But yeah, you kind of have to, because you're on the clock. Usually, if you're in the studio, you have to know when to abandon an
Yeah.
idea if it's not working and switch tracks, and that can kind of be the difference between a really productive day or a frustrating day sometimes, if you kind of
Yeah.
know when to switch streams if that's what's required.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's such a good point about having made so many of your own records, just having natural empathy for what that's like for the artist.
Yeah, think so. Yeah. It's different when I'm making my own records because I have worked with other producers and then some of them I've self-produced and I am a little bit of a control freak, I guess, when it comes to my own music. Even when I'm working with another producer, I still feel like I'm kind of co-producing it.
Yeah.
And I know that about myself and I probably could really benefit from really backing off and handing myself over to someone else who I trust to make all the calls and maybe I'll make a record that way someday, but I don't think I have yet.
Not anytime soon.
Well, I don't know. I could benefit from it, I'm sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Matt. Was there anything that you wanted to say or that you wanted to ask before we close this off?
No, I think we covered a lot, and we gave the thanks to the people who tuned in, and
Yeah.
maybe you learned a little bit about the behind the scenes of making Andrew's record, and
Mm.
I'm excited to hear the singles roll out over the summer and the fall, and I think people are really going to love this record, and it's certainly the passion and the hard work that you put into writing the songs and really comes through, and yeah, I think we made a cool thing together.
Me
So
too.
yeah, it's nice to connect with you again and reminisce about it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you so much, Matt. And so excited to for people to hear it. Thanks everyone who watched. I'll save this so that you can, if you're not here now, maybe you'll be here at some other point. And thanks to Matt for steering the ship on this album. We'll get it out to you over the next year.
Sounds good.
Okay. See
Okay.
ya. Have fun writing your songs.
Okay. Thanks. Bye, Andrew.
Bye.